Hope everybody's blessed. It's Kojo here. So this next video I'm about to show you guys, it was an interview that was being done by a friend of mine called Ben. He was shooting for a documentary to represent the city's creatives, and I think he interviewed quite a few number of artists. I happen to be one of the artists that he interviewed. However, my piece did not make the final cut for the documentary, as it was a pretty lengthy and in-depth documentary of the history of arts in Ottawa, in the city that I'm from. But with that being said, he was still kind enough to send me the footage of our interview, and I felt like some of the questions that he asked, a lot of the questions he asked, was a great get to know you, or a little history about why I do what I do, where my influence comes from. Bear in mind though that this interview is from almost 2 years ago. I believe it was either early 2023 or late 2022. But whatever the case is, I felt like this would be good content for you guys. And yeah, hopefully you guys get to know me a little bit. Maybe things have changed since then, but for those who are interested, enjoy the next piece. Take care. I go by the name of Kojo Dave. My middle name's Kojo, and I'm an artist, social worker, and I guess an entrepreneur from the city of Ottawa. Been making music since 2018. I used to make music for fun long ago, and then kind of stopped because I was embarking on like design ventures and just a little bit of entrepreneurship. And then I came back to music in like 2018. I wanted to switch up my subject matter because I went through like something very supernatural to my eyes, and then I just felt the need to change my subject matter on my music and started making songs for Christ in 2018, and then but with my own touch and wave to it. And yeah, it's been about 4 years. Is it 4 years? Almost 5 years. We're in the 5th year right now. So yeah, and it's been cool. Just kind of been doing this on the side, and now it's kind of opening a lot of doors for me, which I honestly never intended to, as it was just like a side gig. So that's what I do. Piano really intrigued me to like sound the melodies. To this day, my older brother is a professional, full-time classical pianist. My younger brother plays piano, my older brother also plays the drums. I dabble with the drums a bit. My dad was a guitarist for the church back in Ghana and also in Ottawa when we came here. My mom was a worship leader. So I always heard songs around the home and whatnot, and felt like, man, I can do this too. So I started making like recordings through like tape cassettes. And then from there, I figured out how to record on a laptop through a app called Mixcraft. Many people don't know about that. And then from there, took a long pause. And when I came back, that's when I went full-fledged, got Logic Pro, got Interface, all of that stuff, and then started making music. So I feel like influences are just family, church, piano lessons, just the arts, expression in arts in general. So obviously, I was raised in a Pentecostal home. Just because you're born into something doesn't necessarily mean that's what like your truth should be. So I identified as a Christian for most of my life. But even though I identified as a Christian, obviously like I was still just moving anyhow. By that, I mean I was smoking with my peoples, I was out, I was, with multiple female partners. The usual, you know what I mean? And coming from like a place where you say that you believe in one thing and you live in the other, it's just a contradiction. I was just living like a contradictory lifestyle, but I was okay with it. I wasn't saying I was okay with it, but the life that I was living was making it seem like I was okay with it. And then when I was making music, it was all about money, cars, girls.
status properties, even though I didn't have any then. And what happened was in 2015, on 3 separate occasions within a span of 3 different weekends. So weekend after weekend after weekend, I had an angelic experience where like angel came into my room. Like my eyes were open to the supernatural. The stuff that I always said I believed became real to me. I believed it, but I never seen any of it. And it became real to me to the point where I wasn't able to sleep in the dark for 3 years. Whether, anybody watching believes it or not, I fully believe and know that life is more than this flesh. And with that, I was like, hey, if this is real, then everything else that I'm reading is real. Then the way that I'm living is super contradictory. So why am I living a contradictory life saying that I love God, but I'm living as if I hate God? And it just didn't make sense to me. So it only made sense that if I was going to jump back into music, this is what I told myself. If I was going to jump back into music, I'm going to speak about Christ, or I'm going to speak about things from a perspective of a Christian, or things from a perspective of a human, period, who's longing for a relationship with Christ. And, it's hard to do that without sounding corny, because I guess gospel music in the past, unless it was like like choir and with the big backup and live instruments, if you're trying to do like hip hop or R&B, gospel, it wasn't necessarily it wasn't ear candy. It wasn't sounding like amazing, but figured out a way. And I can probably say more than half my listeners aren't Christians, and that's something I'm proud of actually saying, because I made the music not for the Christians, but for those who are living the lifestyle like I was. Hopefully, it influences them and impacts them to start looking at life more than eating, sleeping, earning, repeat, etc. So yeah, that's what happened to me. That's what kind of took place. It was 2015, and then 3 years of not sleeping in the dark because I was that afraid. And then when I jumped back into music in 2018, I said I'm gonna do it for God. So the genre, I don't know where to group myself. Like, you're right. Like, that name, Lecrae, for a long time was that one guy. But now, honestly, there's a plethora of artists who make dope Christian music. Artists like Asha Elia, Limo Blaze, Marizu, Called Out Music, Daphne Richardson, AP, Reggie, like Bridge Music. And so many more like are coming out with different unique sounds. And it might take you a bit to be like, hey, like, wait, you might have to listen to it through and you're like, oh, this is fire. And then you recognize, wait a minute, like this, he's talking about this from scripture. He's talking about this from Proverbs, talking about this and references and whatnot. So I feel like the genre has definitely changed. I would group myself. People have started to group me in like Afro gospel. Spotify has now made that like a genre, like an actual genre. And so a lot of people group me into that Afro gospel artist. Some people say Christian R&B just because I like I don't know. I like vibey beats, and it's not necessarily that I'm rapping, and it's also not that like I'm also like fully singing. So it's kind of like a mix in between the two. Um, yeah. So I guess that to answer your question, I don't know what genre I put myself in. I just kind of, whenever I submit songs, it's usually inspirational or alternative R&B or Christian, and then see what happens. I've been married since 2019. This year is what, 2023, so it'd be 4 years in August, and then my daughter is about to be 6 months. Um, Crazy blessing. Like, when it was leading up to her birth, I recognized that, okay, I'm not going to have as much time for the next 2, 3 months adjusting and figuring out my sleep, my work, all of that. And so I'm going to just try and crank out as much content as I can possible. And so that's when I was recording Endure, like the entire project. But it definitely changed my perspective, man. Like, I can't just get up and bounce anymore. Like, me and Rebecca were able to say, you know what, tomorrow we're going to Ghana, or tomorrow we're going to like London, visit some family, or I can get up, drive to Toronto the next day, or whatever the case is. Now it's like all of our schedule revolves around making sure my daughter is okay. And so, yeah, the mindset of like, you're not just bringing in bread for two anymore. You're supporting a family, and it's just a shift in mindset of longevity, shift in mindset of, okay, her and her children and her children's children, and just family in general. So yeah, like, it's motivated me to like go harder, to be smarter, and also to be still a bit more still, meaning like being okay with seeing somebody else in Greece or seeing somebody else in Portugal, and I'm, you know, in the condo holding the baby, feeding her, you know what I mean? Being content with where you're at, just because there's a different mindset to look at things, you know, further down the line than the immediate now. So it's definitely disciplined me in ways. I still got ways to go. I've only been a dad for about 6 months, but I guess if you count the 9 months of pregnancy, I've been a dad for more than a year. But it's more of a blessing for sure.